Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Art of MMA. I'm Mike Ginn, that's professional kickboxer Brandon the Mechanic Cuttino, coming off a victorious third-round knockout at Gut Check. We'll talk about that. Of course, UFC Vegas 73 last weekend. Mackenzie Dern looking like she's a top contender. We'll talk about that. And then we'll finish up. It's official. Francis is signed with the PFL. What does that mean? And is Dana White crying again? Yep, all that and more coming up on Art of MMA episode 110. But first, Brandon, you got a new shirt in the collection. You want to tell people about it?
Yeah, it's my Bombs and Drama shirt. It's a phrase that I rocked a few years back, but then I kind of just went away from it. But then I brought it back. I got kids saying it in all my classes. But yeah, man, like I said, it was just the mood I was in for this fight. I just had a feeling Bombs and Drama was coming. And that's what happened, man. Third round, I caught the guy with a hook, put him down, and like I told the people, it was drama. So, like I said, we got a shirt for you, t-shirt, tank top, hoodie. Wherever you are, whatever the weather is like for you, we got you covered. Bombs and Drama, go get it. It's hot, man. The people are liking it already.
Yeah, FightersFirst.shop. Get all the collections. Get Brandon's collection. Get the new Art of MMA shirt, Kings of MMA. Check out all that stuff. FightersFirst.shop, home of your officially licensed collections. Let our apparel be a part of your story. FightersFirst.shop. Brandon, speaking of which, a big third-round knockout last weekend. Congratulations on that Gut Check Championship Series. How'd you feel going into that fight? And did you find anything difficult about him? I know he was an interesting last-second matchup, different than what you were training for.
Yeah, no, man. Like the whole fight week, man, I felt good. Like I think I put it out. I want to say like a tweet like a while ago where I just said, no anxiety. I just felt good. Just everything. I was just leaving up. Into the man above's hand. In God's hands, and I was just ready to go, man. Like I was really just chill the whole night. Just waiting around. Yeah, man, it was just time to go, man. When the bell rang, like I said, I knew that he was going to probably come out swinging hammers, which is what he was doing. Like he basically was just biting on his mouthpiece, ducking his head, and just trying to throw some overhand. So, some overhand right, some haymakers, and just hoping that he would catch me. But, I stayed smart. I stayed composed. I just used my distance. I was kind of getting my timing down, and then, like I said, really, really kind of towards the end of the second round is kind of where I started to kind of get my groove. I was kind of flowing. And then, yeah, man, third round came and it was time to end the show.
Did he surprise you at all with anything?
Nah, really everything he did, I kind of knew he was going to do. Like I said, I knew his best chance, of course, was to try to come in, get close, and just throw some wild punches.
Is the plan still the same now that that's done, taken care of? Is Zach Kelly next?
Yeah, man. Yeah. After the fight, we actually had a face off in the ring because I got the mic time and I called him out. I told him I was like, "Yo, Zach Kelly, heal up. September 30th, man. You got a date." And that's when he came in. We did a face off. We shook hands. He was very cordial. He was a cordial guy. I saw him earlier in the day before the fights even started. He came up to me, apologized about getting hurt and everything like that. But he told me that he should be cleared to go by July, so which gives him plenty to get ready for September. And from what I heard,
or is that just the date you're looking for?
No, that is their next show. Their next shows was June 10th, and then the next one after that was going to be September and October. And okay. I'm sorry, September and November. And I didn't want to wait all the way till November.
Yeah, you've been kind of inactive because of fight cancellations and stuff anyway, so gotta get going.
Yeah, so like I said, I mean, from what I hear, all indications so far is that it looks like it's good to go. Like no contracts yet or anything like that. I'm sure they probably got to make sure that he's going to be healed up and ready to go. But like I said, I'll keep everybody up to date. But so far in my mind, I'm looking for September 30th title fight. 5 rounds. Get ready at I'm hoping really 160 pounds, which I guess for the ISKA that would be called their light middleweight division.
kickboxing goes by the same weight divisions as boxing, right?
It's all different. It's all different where you are. Different organizations or sanctioning bodies. They all have different weight classes. So like because for the ISKA they actually have their middleweight division is actually 165, while in boxing middleweight is 168 and stuff like that. But it's everything different. Like there is a like there's like the WBC, which does boxing, but their weight class are the same, I think, for like Muay Thai and kickboxing, because it's the WBC. But like the ISKA, the WKA, they all do their different things. Like same thing with Glory, K1, they all have their different weight classes.
It always throws me off too, because you think about MMA weight classes and you think about boxing weight classes and how dramatically different they are, right?
Yep.
Like the Devin Haney fight, Loma fight was 135 pounds, but it was a lightweight fight. Whereas it's like we're talking about 155 pounds in MMA. And that's just like the world of difference. I never understood why MMA decided to do it so differently.
Yeah.
Because boxing was around, 100 years before. But, it works for each side, I guess. You kind of know what you're talking about. If you're a boxing fan, if you're a kickboxing fan, if you're an MMA fan, what people are talking about. But if you're a fan of one of the other sports and they start talking about it, you kind of start scratching your head. You're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
So I think it's always easier when you just say the weight.
Yeah, that's how it was for me. Like when I was really learning about the boxing weights, like what their class was, I had to figure out, I'm like, all right, this is welterweight. All right, welterweight is really 147 for them. Lightweight's 135 for them. Everything like that. All right, super middleweight. What's middleweight? Everything like that. So it took me a minute, but I finally got it down. I can tell the difference between all of them. But yeah, man. But like I said, I think for me, 160 pounds, I kind of like. What I'm saying. If I was a boxer, that's probably where I would be at instead of the 154 right now. Either one I would do 154, 160. But hey, man, the less weight I have to get down to is probably the better.
Yeah, you're so used to cutting the 154, 155, 160 is a little better, but it's not much different. So It's still right in your wheelhouse. Real quick before we move on, any message for Zach Kelly?
Hey man, just heal up. Like I said, that's all I can say, man. Just heal up. September 30th, man. We got a date.
All right, folks. The Mechanic, 3rd round KO. Check out the highlight on our social media. It's actually spreading everywhere. I saw Tim posted as well. So check it out. It's on social media if you want to check out Brandon's knockout. Also got some photos coming as well. I shared a link to that. They had a great photographer. We shared that as well. Brandon,
just shout outs to my guy Eric Dowd. He was the photographer. He also too is a amateur fighter as well. But hey man, the man does some good work with the camera.
Yeah, definitely. You see it when we posted the segue into here. We posted it on social media. Eric, thank you for your photos. Definitely send a link to him as well. You can check that out in the description. But that said, Brandon, we're here to talk about some fights, as you say, some mamas. And last weekend, UFC Vegas 73, headlined by Mackenzie Dern and Angela Hill. There was a raft of knockouts as well on that card. But jumping right into that main event, I don't know if this says more about Mackenzie or less about what we always think about Angela Hill. Angela Hill is always incredibly tough and durable, and she constantly comes to fight. But she's been on the losing side of quite a few fights lately. And Mackenzie Dern on the other side is just on a rocket ship back to the top after she had a couple setbacks. And she looked fantastic. What did you think of this fight?
Yeah, man. I was completely wrong on this fight. Like I was rocking with my girl Angela Hill because, like I said, man, just Mackenzie Dern. It just kind of seems like every time where they kind of put her in that big fight in that fight that says, hey, you're gonna be like the number one contender. You're gonna be a top contender. She always seems to take an L. And I just kind of thought, hey, you know what, Angela Hill, veteran, been around, she knows what to do. But Mackenzie Dern, like I said, I know she had a lot going on in the world, but she didn't let that stop her. She changed gyms, had a different camp this time. But she went out, did some things, man. I think she got like a couple of 10-8 rounds, on Angela Hill. Like I said, she came out ready, guns blazing, and she did her thing.
Yeah, I almost finished her with the arm bar, hit her with the knee, just good on her feet. And obviously we know what Mackenzie does on the ground, world-class jiu-jitsu. Angela's the same thing, though. Like every time Angela gets put in a marquee fight, she tends to come up short. And you talk about Mackenzie Dern coming up short. Her last loss was to Jan, who just came out and knocked out Andrade. Before that, Marina Rodriguez, who's top 5. And then you have to go all the way back to the Ribas fight, who's another, tough challenger. So it's not like she lost to bums. She lost to top contenders. And it also leaves Mackenzie in a tough spot because we know she's one of the most marketable fighters in the division. Right or wrong, you don't want to be sexist about it, but she is a pretty woman and a pretty face, and a lot of guys watch her. As far as talent goes, she's world-class jiu-jitsu. And then on top of that, she's been doing MMA now for a while, but she's 30. She's in the prime of her career, and yet she's still stuck at 7. A win over Angela Hill is great, but it doesn't really move her up the rankings because, like you said, she lost to Jan, she lost to Marina. Where do you go from here? Because she's already fought a lot of the women above her. The only one I don't think maybe she's fought is Verna, but I think she's pretty much fought everybody else. Actually, she already beat Verna, so left to that, which is funny that she's ranked behind Verna, but maybe Amanda Lemos. Like, where do you go with that to try to find a good fight for her to get up into the title contention?
Lemos, I was gonna say I think Lemos is getting the next title shot. But I want to say I don't think she ever fought on Andrade though, right? Isn't she available? Just kind of available.
Well, we don't know what's up with Andrade coming off that knockout loss, and Andrade is now talking about, like you said it last time, how she keeps jumping weight. Now she hasn't fought Andrade yet. That would make a lot of sense. But yeah, other than that, and then you talk about Lemos getting the next title shot. There's also Jan in discussion for that title shot, the Chinese versus Chinese. And then there's Rose. And that's always the question where what does Rose want to do? Rose just did a grappling tournament. She hasn't been back to MMA since she lost to Wei Li. But she's obviously in title contention considering she was the champ before Carla. And then what's up with Carla? Carla's having a baby and doing that. But is Carla going to come back after the baby? Is she going to ride off in the sunset? We don't really know yet. Carla hasn't really kind of hit it one way or the other because she's happy with motherhood or having the baby and also being a wife right now. So, family comes first. You really don't know when some people have families what they want to do. That's easy for a guy. We always say, hey, the guy's going to go jump back in the cage, but we're not, giving birth. We're not pushing something out. So
yeah, it's gonna be a minute before Carla comes back. So I'm pretty much sure Mackenzie isn't trying to wait that long anyway on her. Like I said, man, to me, I think Andrade would be best. I really kind of want to say I think that could be the only option of somebody that's ahead. If not, man, she probably would have to take somebody behind her.
I'd also say they could run back the Jan fight because that was a majority decision. It wasn't like it was a draw in two close decision rounds. So that's another fight from last October they could always run back to if Jan's sitting there with nothing.
If I was Jan, I wouldn't take that fight. I already beat her. I'm already so close to a title fight. I'm almost like the next after Lemos anyway.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying Jan should. I'm just saying Jan's also one of those people that doesn't turn down any fight. She shows up every time they ask her. So who knows? As far as Angela Hill, what goes next for Angela? Because 15-13, she's got the Cowboy Cerrone effect where she always shows up to fight. But I don't know anybody she hasn't fought yet. And at that point, how do you even make an exciting fight for her? I can't picture her being in a headline again.
I mean, it's Angela Hill. Like I say, man, she, just like you said about Jan, man, she will always show up and fight. She'll go up against anybody. So, I mean, to me, she has more options. Coming off the L, to me, she'll fight anybody. Just like in maybe she could fight Andrade next. They're both coming off losses. That's usually how they kind of like to pit people together. Two people coming off a loss, two people coming off a win, maybe. So. So that could be next for her.
Yeah, it's just
And also too, man, it would be two strikers, no takedowns in that fight right there, man. There's gonna be people that are just coming to bang.
Yeah, it's just up in the air with Angela. She's gonna show up though. I mean, but she's also 38 also, and how much longer does she want to do it, right? Mm-hmm. She still looks in top shape, but how long does she want to keep doing it? Co-main event, Anthony Hernandez, TKO over Shabazian. I think this says as much about Hernandez as also Shabazian. Same thing as the main event. Shabazian was undefeated for a long time and then just went on this losing streak. He bounced back with a win, loses again. Anthony Hernandez, meanwhile, people keep sleeping on him and he just keeps on winning. What did you think of that fight?
Yeah, man, I thought Shabazian came out good in the first round, but then kind of after that, it was kind of all Hernandez after that, and like I said, man, he just came out, he got the stoppage, and he's just moving on. Like I said, people kind of sleeping on him, but hey, he got this co-main feature, so hopefully now more people will know his name and they can talk about him a little bit more.
Yeah, at this point, I think you got to give him a top 15 fight. He's won 4 in a row. The last loss was Kevin Holland. Now it's 3 years ago. So, 4 wins in a row. He hasn't been as active up until that, but a lot of that was also the pandemic and other things going on. People slept on him against Rodolfo. He came in, got the guillotine against a jiu-jitsu master. He came in and beat him in his own game. Got 4 straight wins. I think at least at this point, you got to give him a top 15 opponent. I would love to see him against somebody like Chris Curtis or somebody like that. I think that would be a fun fight. And as far as Shabazian goes, I don't even know what you do with him anymore. He's only 25 years old. You'd think he's been fighting forever as long as he's been in the UFC. But he's now 12-4. He's lost 4 of his last 5 fights. Is he somebody that maybe, and I hate to say it, I don't want to see anybody get cut, but would he be somebody that benefited from getting cut, going to win a couple fights and coming back to the UFC?
And sometimes, that's what you need, man, to get your mind right. You've seen it done with Chase Sherman. He's gotten let go. He goes back on the middle scene, gets win, then boom. Next, they're bringing him back. Saying that could work from him. Hey, man, you just never know what's going on in a fighter's life.
Yeah, you look at somebody like, God bless his soul, Anthony Rumble Johnson. He had all those problems in the UFC, went outside the UFC, won a bunch of fights, came back a hero, came back a champion, level fighter. It works for some people. And, sometimes you get stuck in this rut. Sometimes you need a change. And we talk about it all the time. The UFC is not the only show in town. Bellator, PFL, other places. And, those divisions aren't as deep as what the UFC has. But at the same time, you go out, you get a couple wins against quality opponents, or you get exposed to realize you were never that good to begin with. And it really is a test when you leave the UFC. And then if you make it back, like I said, you come back even a bigger star and make more money. So it's really up to him what he wants to do. Hernandez, though, definitely should get a top 15. Elsewhere on that card, a lot of highlights. Lupa de Godinez got the win over Ducati. Buckley with another highlight reel kick and finish off against Fiallo. Diego Ferreira with the performance bonus knockout over Michael Menace Johnson. You had Borshev get the performance bonus with his TKO over Mache. Carolina Kowalk, I can never say her name.
Double K.
Yeah, Double K. Funny thing is, before this fight, I was saying it over and over again, and I was getting it right, and then this show, and then all of a sudden now the show's here, I can't say it. Kovalevich. Thank you.
I think it's
Kovalevich. Okay, yeah. Close enough. Double K. Carolina. But here's somebody that I want to take a second to talk to before we move on. We had written her off. She was contemplating retirement. She was she was done. Now all of a sudden she wins 3 in a row, and now we're talking about her again, fighting top contenders again, because everybody's talking about Vanessa Demopoulos, who everybody was sleeping on for a long time. Then all of a sudden she wins a few fights, and now she's a contender. She just dominated her, 30-27 across the board. Kept it on the feet, didn't go to the ground where Vanessa is more dominant. What did you think of that performance? Because honestly, I think that it has to put her back, in a top 15 conversation in the strawweight division.
Yeah, man. Like I said, I think she had changed training camps. I think she was hanging out at the American Top Team, with her good friend, or fellow countrywoman, Joanna, because I think Joanna had invited her down, and ever since then, I think that's when she's been on this winning streak. So, hey, man, like I say, it was a good job by her. Hey, man, again, we don't know what's going on in fighters' lives because I know Vanessa had missed weight by like 2 or 3 pounds, I think it was, something like that.
Yeah, the weight of 118, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, hey, I'm sure she was probably feeling a little sluggish, because I think on the scale she was looking drained as well, for 118. So she was probably gassed out, come the second and third round anyway. But hey, man, shout outs Double K, man, doing her thing. Like I say, she was a title challenger before, and she's trying to get back there again.
I mean, you look at her losses; none of them are bad losses. She lost to Andrade, Michelle Waterson, Alexa Grasso, who is now the champ, Jan, and Penne. Like, none of those are bad losses. So I'd be interested to see who they match her up against next. But I'm loving seeing her come back. I think it's a great story, considering she was basically retired at one point. I think, was it 2019? I think she said she wasn't going to fight no more, and then they brought her back. So it's a great story. Also, Gilbert Urbina with the big TKO over Kashe. Nascimento versus Latifi in a split decision. That was an interesting fight. I don't think you were wrong either way you scored that one, but it was definitely interesting. Chase Hooper with the big win. Honestly, man, that kid coming off that one loss he had has bounced back so strongly, and to the point where against Fiore he had one judge gave him a 10-8, like 30-26 card. Like, he dominated that fight. Mm-hmm. Silva with the TKO over Leonardo, and then Garimbo over Sato with the decision. Brandon, before we move on, any highlights from that card you really stuck with you?
Yeah, man. The Joaquin Buckley fight, like I say, he had dropped down to 170, and it looked like his KO power came with him. And then also too, man, the vegan Michael Johnson fight. I really thought Michael Johnson was gonna win over Diego, because Diego was kind of on the slide. But hey, man, and Michael Johnson looked like he was on the rise again, like he finally got things taken care of. But now, man, Diego, man, put his lights out, called it a day. So shout outs on both those guys, Diego and Joaquin Buckley.
Yeah, Diego's one of those dudes. You look at the record on paper, but then you look at the 3 losses he had was Darush, who's like should be fighting for a title. The Gregor Gillespie fight was like fight of the century. Like, they were like rock'em sock'em robots. And then Gamrot, who's another guy who is honestly ready for like bigger things. And then he had been off for like a year and a half going into this fight. And like you said, Michael Johnson had bounced back with a couple wins. So yeah, definitely shout out to Diego Ferreira. Big win for him. I can't wait to see what they match him up with against next. Selfishly, I'd love to see him and Gillespie fight 15 times, because I think every time would just be just a crazy fight. But that is UFC Vegas 73. Of course, leave a comment. Let us know what your favorite parts of the show were. Let us know. Do you think Mackenzie Dern deserves to be in that top 5, or do you think that she still has to do more work? Because other than championship level fighters, she's beaten everybody else. So, and she looked just amazing against Angela Hill. So definitely shout out to Mackenzie Dern for that as well. Brandon, last story of the day seems to evolve. Now, pat myself on the back. I said Francis Ngannou was going to sign with the PFL. I don't think it was much of a secret. I think since you saw one of his family members with the PFL shirt around New Year's, I think we kind of knew the writing was on the wall, right? This week, after UFC Vegas 73, Dana White came out, had a lot to say. He's like, first of all, I don't know much about the deal. And then he proceeded, like Ariel said, he proceeded to talk for like the next 6-7 minutes about the deal that he doesn't know much about. We do know more about the deal now. Not everything. We know quite a bit about it, though. Some stuff is leaked out. Dom Davis himself has come out and talked about it with MMA fighting. And we know a few things. One, that Francis Ngannou is signed with PFL. It's a multi-year deal. They're going to let him box. They're also going to have him with his PFL Super Fight pay-per-view division that they have going on. We know his opponent is going to be guaranteed at least $2 million to fight. And then we also know he's going to be heading up the Africa division as well as a business side of things. From the UFC's point of view, they don't understand it. Dana, look, let me be very clear. I understand what Dana's doing. Randy, I think you understand what Dana's doing. He's a promoter. His best interest is to promote the UFC, to make them look like God and everybody else to look like trash, because they want everybody to keep watching the UFC. That's his job. That's what he's paid to do. That's why he's in front of the microphone talking to us. I understand. When is a promoter lying? When he's moving his lips, just like a lawyer. We know what Dana is doing. Just a couple years ago, and I think, shout out to Ariel Helwani. He did a great job on this on his show. Feel free. I can't post the clips here because that's copyright and whatever, but feel free to, after this show, to go check out what Ariel said about this. It's on Twitter. It's on other things. But basically, he went back and forth showing what Dana said a few years ago, Dana said today. What Dana said just a few months ago, what Dana said today. And just a walking contradiction of what they go. But Brandon, I kind of want to look at this from a different point of view. Everybody's talked about, whether you think the UFC is God and didn't. Francis made this huge mistake, taking a chance. I want to talk about the PFL for a second. The PFL is in the same position, I think, the UFC was 20 years ago. And Dana White seems to forget that when Fertitta Brothers and him bought the UFC, they were bleeding money for a long, long time. They were just gushing money, trying to get this thing turned around to the point where nobody thought it was going to be successful until, I want to say, like UFC 14, I think was like one of the turning points. And of course the tough with Bonner and Forrest Griffin, which really kind of skyrocketed the UFC into a mainstream sport. Before that, it was just a niche thing. Like people that loved tough man fighting, people that loved martial arts, they all kind of watched the UFC grow. PFL coming off World Series of Fighting, transitioning to a new promotion into the PFL, keeping Ray Sefo on board, started with like a leg up, right? Like they already started with a television deal. They have the same distribution that UFC has in 150 different countries on ESPN, on DAZN. They are all over the globe. But Brandon, are people sleeping on not only the fact that the PFL has been paying $6 million a year for their final show every year, but are they sleeping on the fact that Dom Davis has millions and millions? He's not a billionaire, but he's like a multi-millionaire running this thing. Where do you see PFL going with this Francis Ngannou deal? Do you think it increases their business to where it's financially worth it to sign him?
I mean, I know that they're able to get investors out the wazoo because you got celebrities. I feel like every year they're announcing a new celebrity that is investing in the PFL.
Like Dana said, $280 million from the Middle East.
Yeah, exactly. I want to say that's new. I think that's from this year as well. But yeah, man, like you say, they got to take these chances. They got to take these risks, to kind of get, to get other people to kind of come over and sign, with them. They have to sweeten the pot, and this is just one of the things that's gonna help them. But also too, like this is kind of letting people know, hey, especially too, man. I mean, after Francis left, the UFC kind of changed their contracts up, so it's kind of a little bit harder, for people to kind of get out of their contracts anyway, because, like I said, especially those heavyweights, if they kind of say, hey, why stay here? If I go fight Francis, I could at least get up to $2 million or more, if possible, So I think it's good. I think it's good for the PFL. Like I say, it's a smart move. But the thing is, like, we just gotta wait and see what happens. What heavyweights can they bring over? How can the heavyweights develop now? That they have. Because my thing is, man, like people always go like, oh, who's he gonna fight? Who's he gonna fight? The thing is why people don't know who anybody is, because you guys aren't watching the PFL. You watch the PFL, you might be like, oh, hey, this person's pretty good. Oh, they could give Francis a problem. But the thing is, though, people don't know, and that's just their issue.
I mean, I would love to see him against Bruno. I would love to see him against Ante Delia. I think those two fights alone would be very, very exciting. But I think people are missing the point is that PFL is approaching their pay-per-view business like boxing. You see, Floyd Mayweather make $100 million. Francis is not going to sell a pay-per-view like that. But what he is going to do is bring people over that are curious about what the PFL is doing, because whether Dana loves it or not, he left as the UFC heavyweight champion.
Mm-hmm.
He left.
Oh, wait. I mean, according to Dana, they released him.
Yeah, remember? But the only thing they released was his rights to match.
Exactly. I know.
He was a free agent. And you talked about the contract situation. Because of Kung Lee and other people suing left and right, there is a 5-year max on all UFC contracts. No champions clause, no anything. Once that 5 years is up, that's it. You can't like keep them without them re-signing. So I don't even know if they technically could match, to be honest with you. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how that works. But as far as I know, Francis, he fought out his contract, walked away. The reason why he didn't fight is because people say he doesn't like taking risks. Yes, all the stuff that Ariel said about Africa and France and living in couches and the jungle and all this stuff is true. I'll go a step further. He fought against Cyril Gane with 2 torn ligaments in his knee. And he took that fight against doctor's orders because he knew he had more negotiating power leaving the UFC as heavyweight champion than he did if he had to not be able to fight, got stripped of the belt, and Cyril Gane's running off as the undisputed champion. Him fighting Cyril Gane and beating him with torn ligaments in his knee was the ultimate risk, because if he lost, he had no negotiating power. None. Nobody's knocking at the door to get Francis Ngannou, who's damaged goods, with a bad knee. He beats Cyril Gane, leaves the UFC as heavyweight champion. Now, all of a sudden, his negotiating power is up here. I don't know what that means for his boxing. I don't know if they'll get the Fury fight, the Wilder fight, the Joshua fight, or any of these other fights. I'm sure they will line up something for him, especially now that he's kind of working with the PFL. You also got Jake Paul, the MVP Promotions, and doing their boxing things, and they're working with Showtime as well. There's a lot of things moving behind the scenes that Francis could probably get a fight sooner than later as far as boxing goes. But here's the thing I think people are missing. You look at the boxing format. Francis Ngannou got appointed the head of PFL Africa, which means at some point they're going to Africa. What if one of those super fights is in Africa, Brandon? And what if they pack one of those stadiums with, 100,000 people to watch? Say they go to Cameroon, where Francis is from, and pack that stadium. How much money do you think they're making? I think they're making way more than the $2 million, don't you?
Yeah. Like say, whoever does I'm sure any event that comes to Africa is probably going to be a sellout.
Yeah, right now I think this puts more pressure on the UFC because you talked about Izzy wanting to go to Africa to fight Duplessis and whatever. He's going to be now going back to Australia to fight whoever is left standing at some point later this year. But what happens if the PFL beats UFC to Africa? What happens because of the fact that Francis is constantly in Africa working with governments and doing other different things? This deal that you think, he's being overpaid to not do this, not do that. From a business point of view, if PFL gets to Africa first, that is huge money. Huge. And that's not just Africa. You're talking about other countries that have been slow to get on board. You haven't seen too much UFC in France. Guess what? Bellator does big numbers in France. Mm-hmm. And I know that they kind of dispelled the PFL buying Bellator thing, but they are still in discussions for it. They're just not the front runner.
Yep.
If PFL brings Francis to France, where he made his come up, those are big numbers that you're talking about that make his contract very justifiable, even if you do have to pay his opponent $2 million. So when you sit there talking about taking risk, I think they like Dom Davis said, it's a win-win-win-win. Everybody wins. The UFC's going to keep on trucking whether Francis is there or not. John Jones, DC, Michael Bisping, all these guys that are talking heads for UFC, they're going to keep promoting their brand no matter what. But for PFL, this just opened the door. You saw your teammate Shane Burgos go over. Mm-hmm. You saw Anthony Pettis and Fabricio Verdum and some of these other former UFC fighters go over. You're seeing it more and more. Aspen Ladd. Some went because they didn't have a choice. Others went because they did have a choice, like Shane. I said it when Shane signed with him, that opened the door, because now you got a guy in his prime that chose to go there. Didn't say anything bad about the UFC on his way out the door. He chose to go to PFL because they offered so much guaranteed money. You have Kayla Harrison still there. We don't know what's going on with her, but she's still there. You have Nate Diaz bringing a lot of eyeballs. I'm sorry, not Nate Diaz. Jake Paul bringing a lot of eyeballs, whether he wins or loses. People are going to want to see what Jake Paul does in an MMA cage. And a lot of that depends on what he does against Nate Diaz later this year in a boxing fight to keep his stock high after that loss to Tommy Fury. But he knows how to promote. He knows how to promote himself. You saw it on YouTube. You see it in boxing. He knows how to promote himself. And whether you love or hate the gimmicks, people are watching. And if they're watching, what happens, Brandon? Fighters get paid.
Yep.
I'll give you the final thought on this. What is your conclusion? Like, are you excited about Francis in the PFL? What do you think it means? And how are they going to go forward with that?
Yeah, man. I'm happy for it. Like I said, man, I can keep always saying it. We're prize fighters. We're here for the prize, man, trying to get paid. And that's what's going to happen, man. He's getting paid, but also, too, he's making sure that his opponent is getting paid as well, man. He's not just thinking about himself, right? He's thinking about his opponent as well, where everybody's getting paid. That's what he wants. He wants everybody getting paid. He's making money. His opponent make money. Hopefully, then the PFL will make money, from the gate, from the TV ads and stuff like that. So that's what he wants. I think it's good for everybody. And like I said, it's just all in time just to see, what can happen, what heavyweights maybe come over. You never know, man. A freaking Derek Lewis could be a guy that
I never want to see that fight again. I never want to see that fight again.
That's the thing, man. Everybody talks about that, but again, man, dude, that fight was when what? That was when Ngannou just got the brakes beaten off of him by Stipe. So he was a little gun shy. Derek Lewis had a bad back, so he really couldn't do that much anyway.
He tried. I will give Derek credit. In that fight, Derek was the aggressor.
Yeah, which is why Derek Lewis, he got the win. But to me, man, it's like, they're two different guys. Let's see what happens.
I think I saw somewhere somebody was talking about worst fights in UFC history, and in the first two that came up to mind was that one, and then the Rose Carla fight. Like, those are the two. Like, in my mind, like, I never want to see those fights again. Mm-hmm. But yeah, look, it doesn't matter who he gets matched up against. It really doesn't. It's a win for the sport. There's a win for the fighters, and Dana can constantly keep painting it as like the UFC is God. But it also reminds me one last thing, how different everybody talks about wrestling and MMA. This, if anything else, shows how different they are. The wrestling crowd so badly wants competition to compete with WWE. They support AEW. They support NWA like you do. Like, they support a lot of different promotions because they want so badly that there be competition to the top brand. Whereas in UFC and MMA, they so badly don't want there to be competition. They do nothing but bash the other brands like Bellator and PFL instead of realizing that this is competition. And by competition, it makes the UFC better because UFC now has to step up. They can't just sit there and put on weak-ass fights. Look at this fight card we just saw last weekend. It was a fight card that had multiple, like, people that on a free card. And it was action-packed. It wasn't a pay-per-view. It was a fight card. And it was awesome. So competition just makes everybody better. And if PFL is the number 2 promotion in this country, it's pushing UFC to continue to do what they do to be number 1. So it's good for everybody. Like Dom Davis said, it's a win-win for everyone. That said, make sure you go ahead and check out fightersfirst.shop. Get the new Art of MMA shirt. Get Brandon's new Bombs and Drama shirt. Check out everything. Support the fighters. Support the brand. Fightersfirst.shop. Any last words before we get out of here, Brandon?
Then I just say, man, thank you for everybody that supports the show, that support us. Like I said, man, hit that like, subscribe button, comment. Keep interacting with us on the socials. And yeah, man, just get the new merch. And like I said, hopefully, like I said, I'll have some fight news come summertime for you guys.
Also, no major fights this weekend. So next weekend we'll come up with some cool stories to talk about. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, you enjoy your day. This is Art of MMA. I'm Mike Ginn. That's the mechanic, and we're out.